Some corporate money is shifting in recognition of the conversation to come about domestic oil and gas production if there's a Biden presidency.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by WeWork, committed to working in new ways, focusing on health and safety, flexible terms with custom-designed spaces. More at WeWork.com/tomorrow.
I'm David Brancaccio. By one estimate, $11 billion will be spent on this year's election. Can you imagine? Let's take an interesting sliver of that. The $87 million coming into the races from oil and gas companies. Most are Republicans, but with polls showing strength for Joe Biden and some Democrats vying for Senate, fossil fuel companies appear to be hedging some bets now. Marketplace's Nova Safo joins us here. Democrats are getting a little more of this oil money?
They are. The numbers still vastly favor Republicans, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. That's a nonpartisan research group. 85% of oil and gas donations have gone to President Trump's campaign or to the Republican candidates in conservative causes. But Biden's campaign has also benefited. It's taken in about $900,000 from people and PACs associated with the oil and gas industry. And two of the biggest oil giants, ExxonMobil and Chevron, they've bumped up their donations to Democrats compared to the 2016 election. Chevron has spent almost $5 million in this election cycle, and 28% of that went to Democrats. Exxon has donated a little over $1.5 million, 41% to Democrats.
Now, these are some of the biggest oil companies, right? Can we also assume they're also the biggest donors in this industry?
Well, the biggest donors favor Republicans. Chevron is one of them. But among the biggest of the big, that's Energy Transfer Equity, owned by Kelsey Warren. He controls the Dakota Access Pipeline. Remember that? The subject of a coordinated protest by Native American tribes. Thousands camped out in North Dakota. Well, Warren's company is the biggest contributor, $14 million. He's also a Trump supporter. He's reportedly given $10 million to just one pro-Trump super PAC. And then there's Koch Industries. Of course, we all know that name, giving $10 million. And of course, Charles Koch being a well-known conservative donor.
Marketplace's Nova Safo. Thank you. Data from the lender Sallie Mae finds that just 7% of college students are on campus attending classes in person. About half are being taught online only. The rest use a hybrid combination. And there's a lot of unevenness among campuses. Here's Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman.
With the pandemic raging this summer, college administrators didn't even know how many students would pay tuition and show up for classes, whether in person or online. Well, now the numbers are in.
Compared to expectations, really not so bad.
Doug Shapiro at the National School Clearinghouse Research Center says college enrollment's down just 4% compared to last year.
That's encouraging that most students who were already in college have been able to stay enrolled despite the pandemic and all the online and everything else.
But first-year enrollment is down more than 16%. And at community colleges, it's down by a quarter. Emily Wadhwani covers higher ed at Fitch Ratings.
This is concerning and quite frankly surprising given the easier access you have into community college and the lower price point.
Wadhwani says the decline likely reflects job and income loss among low and middle income households. She says many community college students depend on work to pay tuition. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
Retail sales in the U.S. rose by more than expected, 1.9% in September, the fifth consecutive month of growth off that low in May. Markets, the Dow future up 132 points now, 0.5%. The S&P future up 0.4%. The Nasdaq future up 0.7%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Omidyar Network, a social change venture that is reimagining how capitalism should work. Learn more about their efforts to recenter our economy around individuals, community, and societal well-being at omidyar.com.
If you were to lose your job today, how confident would you feel about finding a new one within 6 months? That's among questions we asked in our latest Marketplace Edison Research poll taken amid the deep pandemic recession here. Around 1 in 5 said they're not confident at all in finding something, yet more than 40% said they're somewhat confident. A third are very confident. It's an age thing going on here, as Marketplace's Justin Ho reports.
Evan Neidrower is 32 years old and lives in Los Angeles. He works as a lighting designer, which means he does a lot of different things.
I've got my own personal line of lamps and chandeliers. I'm refurbishing some lights at a 1950s diner.
The way Nightdrower puts it, he has his fingers in a lot of pies.
I'm overseeing some electrical work being put into a kids museum in Santa Monica, and I'm building a custom LED mask for a MMA fighter.
When the Marketplace Edison research poll asked, Nightdrower told us he's very confident in his ability to find work within 6 months. In fact, only about 1 in 7 respondents between the ages of 18 and 34 told us they're not confident in their ability to find work. Nightdrower says if his current gigs dry up, he has a lot of skills he could fall back on.
I could find something that could get me by that I wouldn't necessarily be satisfied doing, but I would have the skills to make some sort of wage.
Younger workers haven't had as much time to focus on a specialty, says labor economist Peter Erasm at Iowa State University. As a result,
the skills that they have tend to be more general and more applicable to lots of firms.
After the Great Recession in 2008, Erasm says older workers were unemployed about twice as long as younger workers.
So what you found was that the younger people were much more flexible in terms of switching to a different type of a job.
Younger workers are also generally more optimistic about the economy, says economist Sarah House at Wells Fargo.
They tend to have a more upbeat assessment of their future earnings, their ability to save for retirement, even what interest rate they might get on their savings account.
And the recovery, so far, may be boosting their optimism. Many young people work in the leisure and hospitality industry, which was hit hard at first, but has been bouncing back vigorously. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
And what is the largest tax evasion case in the history of the United States? U.S. prosecutors say it's one involving a Houston software company executive accused of trying to keep the IRS from noticing $2 billion of his dollars. Authorities allege 79-year-old Robert T. Brockman had people route his money via Bermuda, Nevis, Switzerland. Brockman's the CEO of Reynolds & Reynolds that makes software for car dealerships. He pleaded not guilty via Zoom yesterday. His company says it had nothing to do with this. Our executive producer is Nicole Childers. Our digital producer is Alex Schroeder. Our engineers are Brian Allison, Jay Siebold, and Ben Tolliday. I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.
Support for WNYC comes from Neon.